8 weeks in the book, 8 weeks to go. We're just across the halfway point, and the season has absolutely not disappointed. We've had the most debated offseason team come and go, an intense Heisman race, and a playoff picture that seems wide open. My name is Jens, and this is your AFCB College Recap Podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome to your AFCB College Recap Podcast. My name is Jens, joined today by Alexis again. Dirk couldn't make it up until the last minute. Boy, did we have ourselves a weekend. And dare I say, maybe one of the best games we're ever going to see this season. Alexis, of course, I am talking about Washington versus Oregon. Am I right in saying that this could be one of the best games we're ever going to see this season?
Yes, of course. It was a very nice game. It made me think a bit of Alabama, Tennessee last year, actually. Very close game with a lot of scoring. So definitely the best game of the weekend. I would dare say of the season because there was a lot of playoff implications, of course. The number 7 against the number 8 in the rankings. So it did not disappoint. Sometimes those games tend to disappoint a bit, be more defensive, more low scoring, or a blowout sometimes. But here it was neither of those. It was just scoring on both sides. Maybe some weak defense sometimes, but very nice game.
Yeah, great game. All over. I enjoyed it from the first minute up until the very last second. And from the beginning of the game, you immediately had the feeling that the crowd was behind it. I mean, we were watching together, and I felt like I was in the stadium. It was this noisy, and the TV wasn't that loud. So you felt the atmosphere, and I think you said it even from the first snap, from the kickoff. Even the heat was up, and they weren't messing around. Tackles were made, pretty hard tackles. You knew it was going to be a great game. But for a great game, you of course need great quarterback play, and we absolutely saw this weekend. Bo Nix, Michael Penix, they are up there. They are going to be drafted very highly, probably. Maybe not in the first round, but they are one of the or two of the best quarterbacks we have in the college football. Um, yeah, QB race, so to say, if we're talking about all encompassing QBs. They were amazing. I enjoyed it very much. And Michael Penix has shown very much that he's one of the best, actually. He's the front runner for the Heisman race. He's most likely, we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but he's probably the winner if we dare to have a hot take this early in the podcast. And he's shown it this weekend. He stands in the pocket with poise. You saw him getting hammered by the defense and still getting up, being confident, and that's what people like to see.
Mhm. Yes, indeed. He threw for 4 touchdowns. There was just no stopping him. He found Rome Odunze at every time he just needed to find him. He found him. It was annoying to me as an Oregon fan, of course. But when I look at it objectively, he was just lights out this game. Even that second touchdown pass was a very nice one, even though I didn't want to admit it at the moment. That was just my fan brain talking then. But so did Bo Nix, 75% completion rate, 2 touchdowns, so a bit less impressive in that statistic, but still, again, very high completion rate. There was just, I was just wondering if the defenses were so bad or those two QBs were just so good, because that was crazy to see. Of course, there were some mistakes on both sides, like Oregon safeties could do a bit better on those 2 touchdowns. So could Washington's secondary. But then we haven't even talked about the running backs yet because
Yep.
Bucky Irving on the Oregon side, he may have been the reason Oregon went that far in that game. But Dylan Johnson from Washington had similar stats to me. So both running backs were just keeping this game alive. A nice mix between the passing game with Penix and Nix and the running game. So they did what we were expecting of them. They gave us a hell of a game. I think Washington started better. They started a bit more explosive to me. Every play they made, it was like, okay, then there they go again. While Oregon was a bit more slow paced. But then at the half, it was quite evenly matched up. Of course, that fourth down attempt to a conversion was a bit sour to end that half. Um, but then again, in the second half, you got Washington that came out of the locker room, yeah, guns blazing, and you thought, okay, this game could be over. If Washington continues to do this, it's over. But Oregon's defense woke up at the right time, and we had a game for the whole game.
Yeah, and you said a lot that was very true in there. The one thing that was most important to me was that Bucky Irving is the MVP for Oregon this week.
Mm,
Like you said, Bo Nix, he played very well, had a high completion rate, didn't have the impressive touchdown statistics as Michael Penix has, but we always knew that about the Oregon offense that was very balanced. They relied on Bucky Irving to make the necessary plays to give Bo Nix the space he needed to make the big time throws, which he made. Um, some of them were a bit behind behind the receiver. You saw probably Penix was a little bit more pure in his passing than Bo Nix, but all in all, I wasn't really surprised by this Oregon offense going at it like they went. In the beginning, we saw that Washington scored very quickly.
mm.
Took them like a few minutes. Um, did you have the impression then that what did you think that Oregon had to do to match that energy? Did you feel like they had to go out there and make explosive plays again, or go at it a little bit more mature, keep the downs coming, and not always going for that explosive play, but maybe more relying on the ground game and keep the clock moving, establishing long drives.
Mm. Yeah, I remember telling you the defense had to wake up because if they didn't, Washington would crush them because Washington was being very explosive, and Oregon, yeah, was a bit more slow paced, and that was the right approach to me. I think it was good to keep the ball for that long because they were just slowly getting to the end zone, slowly getting to that score. They did that very well, I thought, but you had to match up that explosivity on the other side, and that's why the defense had to wake up, and they did at the right time. So Oregon did it nicely. Actually, they played it nicely, but yeah, of course we have to talk about those three four
Hmm.
down conversions. They didn't convert any of them. The
Yeah,
last one was maybe even the stupidest one. I get it that you go for it on 4th and 3 at the goal line, that you try to get seven points, but
yeah.
that
Maybe
the third time was too much.
yeah, maybe talking about them individually because each of them had a very big impact
Mm.
on this game. The first one came at practically halftime in the first half.
Yeah,
Um, they were inside the 5, maybe even at the 2 yard line of Washington, so they were very close to the goal line. They didn't convert on 3 or on third down, which you have an opinion about. But then they went for it on fourth down. The score was at that time 18 to 22.
22. Yeah.
Yeah. So they went for it on fourth down in order to score, in order to go into halftime with the lead. They didn't convert. They turned over on downs, which wasn't really that important. The only thing you can maybe say is that they were so close to the goal line they could maybe force a safety. Um, but what did you think about going for it on fourth down, this close to halftime?
Mm.
Maybe isn't it better to just take the points because you know it's always going to be close in the end, which it ultimately was.
Yeah, that time I got it. I mean, 4th and 3, you're down 4 points. I get why you're trying to get the lead before the half.
Mhm.
That one I understood. It's just, yeah, I remember telling you, if in the end they lose by 2 or 3 points, this was decisive. In the end, it was. So that's what's a bit sour. But you can, yeah, you can't really be mad at Danning that he tried it for this first one.
Yeah. And I think, spoiler alert, I think you can maybe find an argument for each and every fourth down they went for because the math maybe tells you to go for it in the first half. it certainly, I had no issues at all with the fourth down I went for. In the second half, okay, there's still a lot of time on the clock. I think it's quite normal you go for it on fourth down over there. You were at the Washington 8, so it was still 18 to 29, but you still have a lot of time left on the clock. So I understand
And
going for it.
that's when the defense woke up. So that was good. So the second one, of course, you can understand it too. But again, that's 3 points you left.
Yeah,
So that's 6 points already that you left on the field.
and I
That's a
think
lot.
then, yeah,
Looking back at it in hindsight, it's a lot when you leave
yeah.
6 points on the field.
Yeah, it's always
But
easier to talk about it afterwards, knowing what the outcome is. But at the time, you still had the feeling that it was kind of a good idea to go for it, although you kind of knew as well you already missed on one. You go
but it
for it on the
was
second one.
it was 29-18 for Washington at that moment. So I think you needed to take the points there just to get back in that one touchdown. Yeah, one touchdown. I forgot the word for a moment, but just to get back within one touchdown of
Mm.
Washington, and they didn't because they didn't convert that fourth down. So it was 29-18, and you gave Washington back the ball. Washington, that was doing very well up until then. I think they only had one punt up until then. They scored a touchdown before it. So
Yeah, they punted in the first half on the first
yeah, and then they had
drive.
an interception also before it. But that's it. Otherwise, it was always a touchdown.
Yeah,
So that you would risk it at that moment. So you're down. Sorry, you're down 11 points at that moment, and you try it again, knowing that that offense was crushing you before. That was a bit more risky, I think.
yeah. Well, you know what they say, no risk it, no biscuit, and you're in the Pac-12, very competitive, very exciting game. I think it was kind of the perfect setting to go for it. Then the last one, maybe the most controversial one, because everybody could kind of find an argument to go for it. The last one, well, let's say there was a lot of argument online. People still kind of get it. Afterwards, Dan Lanning only regretted going for it on the first one. But the last one was maybe, in my opinion, the most boneheaded move you could make at the time. You were up four, so it was 33 to 29. Up four, still 2 minutes left in the game.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
you could kind of, with a conversion, you run out the clock possibly. I think Washington still had some timeouts left, but essentially you kind of move the game more into the winning column for you. You go for it on fourth and three on the Washington 47. So yeah, you're all already in the opposition's territory, but you're so close to
To
midfield. You know
midfield.
who you're playing. You know you're playing Michael Penix, who doesn't at least need a lot of room, but with this wide receiver core at his disposal, with still 2 minutes left, only 4 points you need to bridge. I would have punted it at this time and put them back so far, because you know they need seven. Field goal is not enough, but
Indeed. And
you
I'm just
essentially
wondering.
give them 40 yards maybe.
Yeah, indeed, because I'm actually wondering because the three drives before, sorry, they did stop Washington, and was Dan Lanning thinking a bit too, yeah, too cocky maybe that he thought, okay, our defense is crushing them right now. We are stopping them. Even if we go for it, we miss it. Our defense will stop them. And I think that's wrong. If he thought that way, that was wrong. Maybe he thought statistically that he said, okay, we missed 2 4 and 3s already. It can't keep on happening. Maybe he thought this time he would convert, but yeah, it was a. I think at that time in the game he was feeling a bit too self confident because Oregon had all the momentum at that time. They stopped Washington. And Oregon scored themselves. But that should have been a punt. Just punted to their 5 yard, of even if it's a touchback. It's
Yeah,
just 25 yards you gave them. So that was a bit stupid. And of course, Washington gets the ball back and scores a touchdown to go up.
yeah. It was indeed one of the plays I would like to take back if I was Dan Lanning. But all in all, it contributed to what was, in my opinion, one of the best games we're going to see this season, because you kind of had Washington dominating the first half, although Oregon was still in there, but not completely
Mm.
away. And then you had the other way around in the second half with Oregon dominating the run game. I mean, Bucky Irving was so important for them, like we said already. He just keeps his legs moving. Jordan James was in there as well. Let's not forget him. He had a touchdown as well in
Mhm.
this game. Um, Perfect second half almost from Oregon, and then you kind of let it slip through your fingers in the last 2 minutes. Um, what are your implications, or playoff wise? What are the implications this game had now? Because before the game, like we saw with Texas Oklahoma, didn't have the feeling that the loser of this game would be out of the playoff race. It's a feeling I still have today. Is that what you think as well?
Yeah, they only lost one spot in the college football ranking in the AP top
Mm,
25. Sorry, so they're ninth right now. It's still everything is still possible, especially when you know they still are playing some tough opponents, so they get the chance to redeem themselves.
mhm,
But it's weird, but you actually have to hope Washington goes undefeated until the championship game, so you can
mhm.
get your revenge in the championship game.
Yep.
If Oregon does that, so Oregon wins out and gets back at Washington in the championship game, they're probably in. If Washington wins out, of course they're in. There's no question about that. So both could still be in. But yeah, I think it's only those two teams that are getting a real shot at the playoffs in the Pac-12.
Yep. Yep. Indeed. Um, does Washington get in if they lose one and they win
Depends.
the championship game? Suppose they lose, they still have a lot of good teams left. They still play USC, Utah, Oregon State, Washington State. Very important game for very difficult teams. If they lose one of them and they win the championship game, are they in? Do
For
they have
me,
one to spare?
it depends on the other conferences actually, because the Big Ten can get wins from each other. So I'm talking about, of course, Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. They could all lose one. So if Washington has one loss, why not put them before an Ohio State or Penn State? Michigan, I wouldn't put them before Michigan, but you
Mhm,
could talk about Ohio State and Penn State. So it really depends. Like this weekend could be really important for Washington, and not even because of their game. And it could be Ohio State, Penn State that's important to them. If Penn State wins this, their shot actually increases at getting in with one loss.
yeah. Is going to be a very exciting race at the top of the Pac-12. Um, one team still at the top for for this moment of the Pac-12 is USC. They are still on top because they are 4-0 in conference play, but they lost against Notre Dame this weekend. A loss that some saw coming, but not in this way. They lost
Hmm.
20-48. They kind of didn't stand a chance in this game. When they started to come back, they had some moments where you had the feeling they could come back. Notre Dame immediately answered. So USC out of the playoff race.
With one loss, you're never out. But with what we've seen from them, I think you have to say they're out. They're still playing good teams. Notre Dame was their first real test, and
Mhm,
they're still playing good teams. Let's not forget about Colorado that had that comeback. Okay, we know it was they were resting players and it was garbage time, and Colorado actually never had a chance, but they got back, yeah, really close to USC.
yeah,
And Notre Dame, with not even a great offense, put up 48 points on them.
yeah,
And we know it's not all the offense that did the work, but still 48 points against, granted, a ranked opponent and your biggest rival. But it's too much to yeah, it's too much to get against when you're only scoring 20. You just got blown out by another ranked team, so that means you don't deserve to be that high. And I it would surprise me actually if they get back into the playoff race. But with one loss, you're never out.
yeah. Never say never, indeed, because if they win out with the schedule they have, they only have one
They're in.
game that they are. Let's say it's a cupcake uh, game against California or Cal.
Mm.
Within 2 weeks, they now have a bye week. Or no, bye week already was. But
Yeah,
they
they
still
already had.
play Utah, Washington, Oregon, UCLA, still ranked. So
Yeah, if they went out, they would have beaten Washington and Oregon. Yeah, they're the first in the Pac-12. Then.
yeah, indeed, they are the first in the Pac-12. Then they have some kind of revenge game, probably against one of the two in championship game. Most likely is going to be Washington. Then,
Mm.
if Oregon's already two behind, but this game against Notre Dame, like you said, it wasn't even against a great offense. You still had to put 48 on the board in the negative column. Wasn't really the game we were expecting, especially not from one certain first pick in the next coming draft, Caleb Williams. He had 3 interceptions, and I saw those interceptions. I watched them again today for this podcast. They were pretty horrible. He looked like a freshman out there because his first interception, I wrote it down here. One thing that's very important before I go into deep dive, Caleb Williams was always under pressure. This offensive line, it couldn't even stop like one of the most uh, uh, unimpressive pass rush defenses, and that's a big statement. But this offensive line is not good at all. Maybe they're even worse than their defense. Caleb Williams was under pressure the whole game. He looked kind of panicky when he started throwing. His 3 interceptions was always under pressure. His first interception was under pressure. He threw it in the right direction, but you saw that he kind of wanted to get it out there very quickly, and the pass was just overthrown. Interception. Second one, 6 rushers. He threw it in the right direction, just underthrown. He kind of forced it out there. And then the last one was the worst one in my opinion. And the reason we're talking about Caleb Williams' interception this much is because he's never had a game with 3 interceptions. So you kind of have to look at it why it happened. The third interception came against 5 rushers. He escaped, like we've seen him do plenty of times. Um, he kind of throws it off platform, like we've seen him do many a times, and it's just a bad throw. It doesn't even get into the neighborhood or the vicinity of a receiver. Um, he wanted to make a hero play, uh, while he even had like an option to me that was kind of open, and he kind of, like I said, he tried to make the hero play, escape from pressure like he's done so many times, and just throw it out there, because he had again highlight plays this game. One of his touchdowns was like a highlight play. Probably people would repeat over and over if they didn't lose. But those interceptions, I don't know. It's not like he's now not the first pick anymore, because he's still one of the most talented guys in the country. If we're talking QB, but every QB can have an off day,
Mm.
and we've seen QBs in the NFL have off days as well, and we even had one last weekend. And sorry to now open an old wound, but Jalen Hurts had 3. It's not like we're not gonna talk about Jalen Hurts now being a bad QB. Caleb Williams is still the first pick. He just had a bad game, and
Mm.
he
I
can
think
never have one.
it's the first time this season, and maybe for a whole lot of last season too, that he was under pressure for the first time ever. And I think it got a bit to his head because he, like you said, he tried to do hero plays. He tried to bail USC out because he's used to it. He's used to it that he can do that. We saw that in the beginning of the season against San Jose State. He got a bit under pressure, but of course that defense is less impressive than Notre Dame's defense. And he scrambled. He did some crazy things. He completed passes. He won the game. Of course, why wouldn't he try to do it this game? And he tried it, but against Notre Dame was a bit harder, and he will get
Mm,
better at this probably. but it was a reality check to him this game, that he maybe feels now that he still has progress to make,
Yeah,
because
and
everything up until now was like, okay, Caleb Williams is. Didn't Dirk say he should sit out the season because he's already a number one pick? Well,
yeah,
this could be like yeah, this could be like showing him, okay, you did well up until now, but you still have some steps to take before you go to the NFL.
yeah. All right. USD is still a very good team, and they will probably, I don't know who, but they will probably beat one of the Pac-12 contenders because that's just how the Pac-12 works. They beat each other up,
Who are they
and
playing at home from Washington or
um,
Oregon?
they play Washington at home.
And Oregon at Oregon. Okay,
Yeah, and
interesting.
we've seen the Washington environment. I'd be very glad as a QB not to play in that environment as an opposing
Oregon,
QB.
Oregon is the same, so
Yeah, well, now we've seen how it can be for Washington in such a game. Oregon still has one coming against USC, and although people are kind of saying that they are a bust now because they've kind of been exposed the way we thought they could be exposed, you still have
yeah.
to play them, and they still have the possibility to just fuck you up. Um, Notre Dame, we're not going to talk about them too much because it's a team that's already out of the playoff race, or are they?
Yeah, it's two losses is a lot. We all know that, but there's still a lot that can happen because every team from five on. No, I think who has one loss from the seventh on. I think from the seventh on, everybody has one loss. So there's a lot that should happen, and they don't have a championship game, so they can't really redeem themselves there. They
Mm,
can't put up a big performance in a championship game. So a lot
yeah,
has to happen. It is still possible. Like I give it like 5% chance, or
yeah.
even less. But
A lot has to happen, and they don't play too many important games that will draw attention from voters. They still play Clemson, but otherwise
mm,
it's Pitt, Wake Forest, and Stanford.
yeah,
If
indeed,
if you close out the season 4-0, people are still they are going to notice. They're going to put you in the top 20 probably, or keep you in the top 15 as they are now. But you're not going to be a
in a
playoff
12
team.
team playoff, they would be in.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And we have other teams now that are on the brink of being a 12-team playoff team
Mhm,
that are not in there, like Air Force. If they win out, which they could perfectly do,
mhm,
they are in in the playoffs next year, which is great
yeah.
for those teams to be in the playoffs. Now they are not as kind of like this elite club, but this elite club is also kind of interesting. Like only the best of the best of the best get in there, and to some teams it's kind of unfair, but
That's maybe
it
a discussion for another time, because if we start this right now,
yeah.
it's going to take a long time.
Yeah, but Notre Dame normally they're not in the playoff run or hunt anymore. Especially with this team, they have like this crazy good defense with Xavier Watts, the safety who had like 2 interceptions against USC, playing his best game. He has 4 on the season now. Um, Amazing defense, top 5. Same like UCLA, that still plays USC by the way in the last game of the season, but that offense is just simply not able to keep up because and you saw it against Duke. They weren't able to put up this many points. You saw it against Ohio State. Okay, Ohio State is very great defense, but still they struggled. Sam Hartman, he elevates this offense to a level that they weren't able to achieve with Tyler Buckner.
Mhm. Of
But
course, with estimate.
it's still capped. And Estime is one of the greatest running backs in the country, maybe. But otherwise, who's it gonna be? They don't have like this clear number one receiver, which will elevate your game or bail you out when it's needed. So this Oregon or Notre Dame offense is just simply not good enough to be in the playoff hunt. And you've seen it against USC as well. Most of the uh, scores came on defense or special teams, and the scores they had very close drives. So Yeah, I think they're at the ceiling right now.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, it's always disappointing to see, and maybe now you would think, okay, but they scored 48 points. Yes, but like you said, two of them come on one kickoff return and one fumble return, and then you have two from Estimate and two from Hartman. So yeah, indeed, Hartman is better for this team than Buckner was. That there's no doubt about that. But that's Notre Dame's problem. They don't have a top receiver, and a team like Notre Dame should have this. If they had that top receiver, they wouldn't have lost against Louisville probably. They they just miss that star power on offense. They have a very good QB, not a star. They have a very good running back, but he's not. Yeah, he's a sub. I mean, he's not better than Donovan Edwards. He's not better than Blake Corum. He's not better than Hampton. He's not better than Penn State's running backs. So he's not the clear top yet. So their offense is a bit. I wouldn't say mediocre. It's just not top notch. It's not
Mm,
going well up against those better teams with good defenses, like we saw
yeah,
against Ohio State actually.
yeah, yeah. Indeed, indeed, weren't able to keep up or put up the necessary points to close out the game, like against
Hmm.
Duke as well. We've talked about the Pac-12 for half an hour now. It's normal because three of the four ranked matchups we had a team from the Pac-12. At, we even had five of them. There was still, and he is slightly above the other one from the Pac-12. There's still another game from the ACC that drew many eyes. UNC Miami, and people were kind of excited about getting to see Drake May go up against Tyler Van Dyke, two very good QBs, and the real return of Tez Walker. He previously played against Syracuse, was kind of short notice, but now he had a full week's practice together with Drake May, and it was complete fireworks.
Hmm.
People were not disappointed at all to see Tez Walker back on the field. He had three touchdowns. What a game it was, and Drake May is just back on top. Like he never left.
Yeah, four touchdowns. That's crazy because I remember 2 3 weeks ago he had a ratio of 5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. That got a bit better. I'm glad to see that because Drake May was a clear cut favorite to be number two, maybe even
Mm,
number one after this season. And up until their bye actually, there were doubts. Coming in, but then their bye week came against Syracuse. He had a very good performance. It was just we wanted to see what can he do against a ranked team, Miami, of course, and he did not disappoint. Four
no.
touchdowns, 273 yards. That's a very nice performance. And Walker may be the key to his game actually, because last year
Mm,
he had Josh Downs. This year apparently he didn't have. Yeah, he didn't find quite a connection like he did last year with Josh
mm,
Downs, and now he seems to have found it in Walker. So that's nice to see. But let's not forget about the other QB because Tyler Van Dyke was actually impressive too. He had 2 interceptions, granted, but also 4 touchdowns and 391 yards. So it's not his fault. Miami lost this game actually.
no. It was a great game overall. Miami just kind of the offense sputtered in the second half, which led to UNC just yeah running away with it because um, UNC actually trailed 17-14 going into
Mhm.
halftime, and then they came out, scored 21 in third quarter. Um, yeah, game was over before the fourth
Mm.
quarter. Miami came back just a little bit, but still, game was kind of done.
And that's the difference with last year actually. UNC's defense is winning them games this time around. Last year, Drake May had to do everything because he knew, okay, I'll get back on the field and they'll have scored at least 3 points. Now, like we saw in the second half, in the third quarter, actually, UNC's defense is able to stop some teams. I'm not saying they can go up against top offenses in the league, but they can help this team a bit further than they did last year.
Hmm.
And last year was already pretty good. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's nice to see a
yeah,
development.
yeah. The defense had uh, three. sacks, 6 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions. Pretty shabby, if you ask me. The one thing, although we're just saying that this defense is winning them games all of a sudden, or detrimental to them winning games, you
Maybe I should change it to helping them win games, not winning
yeah,
them
but
games.
they are not winning them games. They're
Mm.
detrimental. They're very
Yeah,
important to them winning games. If they're not out there, they're losing this game. But you still kind of had the feeling that Tyler Van Dyke was kind of finding windows in that defense,
mm,
and UNC will still face some pretty darn good QBs if they make it to playoffs. Because we're talking playoffs with UNC now. Because
yeah.
this ACC race, okay, it's a two horse race. Florida State, UNC.
Have
They are
Travis
gonna
then.
face You're gonna face Jordan Travis,
Mm.
who's a pretty good QB, who has a pretty good wide receiver in Keon Coleman. Um, even if you win that one, I'm not saying they're not gonna win. Even if you win that one, you're going to the playoffs. Probably gonna face a pretty good QB, except if you're facing Ohio State. But then you have Marvin Harrison Jr. It's going to be tough for that um, coverage unit to keep up.
Of course, that's true. If they get in, if it's a big if, because for the states, mm, okay, I would like to see that game though because they don't play them in the regular season. It would be nice to see them match up against Florida State, especially then because of what UNC's offense could do. I would like to see that. But if they get into the playoffs, yeah, it could be a one and done, of course. But you never know. Look at TCU against Michigan last year. Nobody gave them a shot. They still did it. So if the offense can still keep up, like I mean, last year Drake May did it enough. So if he just finds one game in the playoffs where he
Mm.
can outscore the other team's offense, or just like outscore his own defense, let's say it like this, um, yeah, then they could get far. But that's a long shot. Let's not get ahead of myself here. I would like it, but they still have a tough game against Duke, tough game against Clemson. So they're not they're not there yet.
Yeah, as you said, it could be very important for Drake May and this UNC offense, and actually the whole team, that Tez Walker is back. A little bit of a background story for those who weren't completely caught up in it last week. Tez Walker transferred in from Kent State in the offseason, but the NCAA didn't grant him any eligibility to play the season because he's already a two-time transfer. So he committed to North Carolina Central Eagles. He never played a snap for them because he transferred out immediately to Kent State after 2 years there, transferred in to North Carolina. But the NCAA has this strict rule on two-time transfers and a very high, so to say, uh, threshold you have to cross if you want to be able to play. In reasonings why you're transferring in, he said it to be closer to his ailing grandma. Um, NCAA didn't grant him eligibility. Now they did. All of a sudden, there was like this whole bitch fight between the NCAA and North Carolina. But now he's back. It's very important to UNC because he's the key probably to this team. Now my question is, it's maybe a bit of a hot take, but the combination of Drake May, Omarion Hampton, and Des Walker, are we talking about the best trio in college football? There's some
Of,
other ones out there, but
mhm.
if Des Walker is whatever he promises to be, could he or could they?
It, they could, but it's sorry, Hampton. It's Walker's second game of the season, so of course he did very well in both. Let's just give them the rest of the season to figure that out. But if he keeps on playing like he did this weekend, of course we could be talking about one of the best trios in the league. Especially if you have May as a QB, you won't find a better trio with a better QB.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Williams, but I don't think they would have a better trio. So of course, with May, you
We're
have already
talking
the best.
Caleb Williams and
Yeah.
yeah,
So
okay.
that's the only better QB I see than
Mm.
May. So USC is out of the question in this discussion for me. So of course, you have the best QB in Drake May. Then you have to figure out who do you think is the better running back. Hampton, is Hampton the better running back? Is Edwards the better running back? Is Singleton the better running back? I don't know. There are a
Mm.
lot of options. Or as we just talked about them, is Bucky Irving the better running back? It could be. I put Hampton up there with them, but maybe not. No, he isn't the best running back. And then at receiver, we saw a lot of good things from Walker. He hasn't played division. He hasn't played actually Power Five before, so it's his second game in Power Five. We still need to see if he can keep this up. Um, I believe he could be, but once teams have tape, of course, we know it gets more difficult sometimes. Um, but yeah, it's a possibility actually, but not right now. I'm going to put it
Mm.
like that. Not right now. It could be later this year. Maybe at the end of the year, we say, okay, this year these three are the best. That was best trio, but not right now to me.
Top two?
I would let's say top three.
Okay. Who do you put out there? Give me your rankings. Supposedly USC is first. Williams, Lloyd, Mario Williams, Brandon Rice, Zachariah Branch, whoever you want to put there at receiver. Who's your number two?
Um, I
I
don't
have
know.
mine number two, I think.
I have two options.
Me too.
Um,
It's
they
actually
both played this weekend against each other, but I have to put Penix and Washington first. I can after this weekend I should.
mm,
So
yeah,
Washington, Oregon, UNC.
yeah. I put Bo Nix slightly up there because of Bucky Irving, because I have him a bit higher than Dylan Johnson. And I
No,
think the difference between Bucky Irving and Dylan Johnson is a bit greater than the difference between Rome Odunze and Troy Franklin, because
I
they are pretty close
completely
to each other.
completely agree. It's just for me, Penix stats and the way Penix plays. I I can't do it to him to put him in second. So
Yeah,
of course,
of
well,
course.
come to think of it, Knicks had a better completion rate, completed more yards this weekend. So but you can't always look at pure stats, and Penix elevates Washington to another level. While if you would put another quarterback in Oregon, you may
Mm,
get approximately the same.
yeah, indeed. All right, let's wrap up the ACC because we again have to move back to the Pac-12 because there was another ranked game over there in that conference. I don't know how they do it, but this year they are pretty great, if you ask me. Of course, we're talking about UCLA at Oregon State, one of the best defenses in the country as well in UCLA. Um, they have Latu on the edge. Boy, do you have a great defense if you have that guy. Against Oregon State, DJU, one of the most polarizing QBs in past years at Clemson, who's now having a bit of a better season at Oregon State. He has his bad moments. He's had them this weekend as well, but he's playing a bit more consistently this year. Love to see it. He was a five-star recruit out of high school, never lived up to it at Clemson, transferred out, came into to Oregon State, said it was more fit to his playing style. And you can kind of see it because this Oregon State offense is actually pretty fun to watch. Do we have the third or fourth team in Oregon State in the Pac 12?
Yeah, you have to say it because
Three or
it's
four?
not. No, it's three. You can't say UCLA. They just beat them. They beat
Mm-hmm.
Washington. Did they beat Washington State? Yeah, they did.
Um, Oregon State. Do you mean Oregon State
Yeah,
or
did Oregon
UCLA?
State beat Washington State? They already played,
They
but kind of
lost. They lost
they lost.
Washington
Okay,
State.
but still, we've seen Washington State's playing bad in other games, so you
Hmm.
should put them above them.
Yeah, they lost this weekend as
Utah,
well. So
Utah without Cam Rising is not better than Oregon State. Of course, it's USC you're thinking about. I'm I am too. They're still playing each other, right?
Yep.
So at this moment, right now, I would put them
Or
before USC.
USC is not playing Oregon State actually. No,
Oh, that's a
no, my
pity.
bad.
Um,
But
they're just doing very well. I mean, this game was over at the half. They
mhm.
beat UCLA before the half. So then, if you do that, I mean, UCLA isn't the best team, you know that. But if you can do that, being Oregon State, the team that hasn't found a new conference yet, just to
Is
be
it?
noted,
They're playing Pac-2.
yeah, they're pretty good. And maybe it's because the USC hype is a bit over, and Oregon State never really knew that hype. But I'm putting them slightly above USC at the moment, and
Yeah.
certainly not because of DJU, because he was good, he was fine overall this weekend. But like as you said, he's not a top QB.
No.
It's
No.
just the whole team. For me, the whole team, offense and defense, yeah, they stick together, so that's nice.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. DJU is currently over 1,500 yards on the season. He has already thrown 15 touchdowns. And if your offense can put up 36 points, or if your team can put up 36 points, because there was some defensive scores um, on a very good defense in UCLA, then you do have a pretty good team to match them. UCLA playing with freshman QB Dante Moore. He's again thrown 3 picks. They weren't pretty great. The first one was off platform in which he tried to Mahomes it to one of his receivers. Second one, his arm was hit, and the third one was again a bad throw, in which he rolled out and threw it to the sideline, and one of the cornerbacks jumped out. He saw it immediately where the pass was going. Not great. Um, do we need to expect another QB transferring into UCLA next year to put fire or light the fire under Dante Moore, because he's already thrown 7 interceptions on the season?
Yeah,
If he keeps
you
this up, he's probably not even starting, and unless spring practice next year is going to be great.
I get it, but he was a 5 star, I think. If you just
Yeah,
throw him away now, it's
yeah. You
harsh.
you
It's his
don't. You
freshman.
just
Yeah, yeah, no, it's his freshman season. We need to give him some slack. It wouldn't be a bad idea, like you say, just bring in a veteran in college. Just bring in a more
yeah,
experienced QB who can, yeah, just light fire under his feet and see what he can do. Then, if he reacts bad to that, yeah, then probably he's out. But I wouldn't be too worried about him right now. Of course, it can't all be Drake Mays. It was to
hmm
be expected that there was going to be some kind of learning curve, and he's experiencing it now.
of
And
course.
he's in the Pac-12 against a lot of competition. So yeah, he's not doing good. We know that, but he'll learn from it, I think. So let's see what he can do in the next few games. If it gets better, those interceptions need to get better before the end of the season. If they don't, then you may look at I don't know, well, at another QB actually.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
he's
Of
not
course,
helped with his wide receivers though. He doesn't have any top wide receivers. Last year, let's not forget, last year they had a very good running game, of course, combined with DTR. But Zach Charbonnet, he doesn't have a Zach Charbonnet on his team that can
Carson Steele is
help
pretty
him
good.
win games. So, what did you
Carson
say?
Steele is Carson Steele is doing pretty well this year.
Yeah,
So
he's
at,
no
at
Zach Charbonnet.
no, of course not. But ah,
Yeah.
they're kind of okay. He is already up to 500 yards this year, so it's kind of okay. But indeed, like you say, he's not being held by his skill positions
Mm.
um, this year. A lot to look forward to in this Pac-12. I think we can actually say that, because they're going to trash each other probably in the next 4 to 5 weeks. A lot of important game weeks ahead. Pac-12 is going to be lit. Probably some teams are going to be dropped because they lose to each other. But I expect one of these teams to be in the playoffs. I think it's almost impossible to not have one in the playoff. It's not going to be Washington. It's going to be Oregon if they win out.
If they all lose too, no one's getting in.
Yeah, probably because then you have somebody from the ACC knocking on the door, because we can already assume that there's going to be one Big 12 team, because yeah, it's either Texas or Oklahoma. Texas, if they win the championship game, they are probably in. If Oklahoma wins, it's going to be them, because the schedules they're playing are still kind of feasible. But it's still the Pac-12. Big Ten is going to have one at least. SEC is going to have one probably. Probably one as well. So I think it's a race between the ACC and the Pac-12 to deliver the fourth one.
Yeah,
I
it
think
is.
that's the right assumption.
Yeah, it is indeed. So you have to win. Actually, if they win out, if Washington wins out and Oklahoma loses another one, you can't put Washington below one of them. You can't.
Yeah, indeed. Great. We have kind of gone okay. We're still under 1 hour. We have some topics left. Is there one thing that you still want to highlight from the past four games, or do you want to move on to the next ones? Because
Let's move on to some other games.
yeah, the thing I want to say, Michigan is pretty damn good. They again put up 50, just like last week. They received more first place votes compared to last week as well, I think. JJ McCarthy is up there with the best QBs in the country. He's no Caleb Williams, but nobody is. He's maybe QB 3, 2? No,
Not
3.
two.
Let's put it at 3 probably. Unless we're doing hot takes again. We're not
Hmm.
doing hot takes. QB 3 maybe.
Then I would
Michigan,
completely disagree, but go on.
yeah, Michigan is a very good team, and they are to be reckoned with. They are a force in the playoffs, or they're going to be a force if they are in the playoffs. But to me, it's undoubtedly the best team in the Big Ten.
Yeah, they proved this weekend. When we were watching it a bit, so we put on the game. It was 7-0 to Indiana. We thought, okay, we could maybe see something, but then Michigan just shut us up and crushed Indiana. So yeah, they did what they had to do. They can't do anything more than that.
Mm,
They allowed 7 points, okay, but they crushed them.
yeah.
You can't expect more than that. As did
Up
Ohio
until
State.
up until this point, Michigan has not allowed a first and goal. That's
Okay,
that's
that's crazy.
that's a pretty sick statistic.
Hmm.
So
That's
they've actually, it was the criticism that they have this pretty easy schedule up front. Some teams on that schedule appear to be pretty okay, going on to winning records. But when they are even faced with an easy opponent, they trash them, and there's no coming back in that game. It's not like they play with their foot and allow them to come back. And no, it's just they trash them. JJ McCarthy is throwing everything to bits. Blake Corum is running everybody to shreds. They are a pretty good team, and I see this as the clear-cut favorite in the Big Ten. Although Ohio State and Penn State are both pretty good and would probably win out in other conferences. Maybe.
yeah. At this point, we have to say Michigan is the better team. I know
No,
it changed over the last 3 or 4 weeks. Michigan is
that's
suddenly from 3-1, but
that's possible.
that's rightfully so, of course. Yeah, the Big Ten will be decided in those 3 games between them.
Yeah,
I just have the feeling that no other team in the Big Ten can do anything about Ohio State, about Penn State, about Michigan. So those will be the true
yeah.
tests. Um, yeah, it will be good defenses against each other. Maybe you shouldn't expect too much scoring in those games. Um, yeah, it's
They
I'm I'm actually just curious and looking forward
yeah,
to those games because will Ohio State lose 3 times in a row to Michigan?
maybe it's the
I,
end of Ryan Day then. They play at Penn State and at home against Ohio State. Which one? would you rather have, at Ohio State or at Penn State?
It's at home against Ohio State, right?
Yeah, Ohio State is at home.
And you're asking me rather at Penn State or at Ohio State?
Yeah, if you could switch it around, play
Okay.
at home against Ohio Penn State and at Ohio State, or like it is now.
That's a tough one because oh, it this year it depends if yeah, of course the stadium will be rocking in Penn State. Even if they lose against Ohio State this weekend, everything is still on the they have to win against Michigan then. So I don't think you want to play in that game. That's a very tough one. So give me at Ohio State instead of at Penn State
As a Michigan team,
as a
you'd rather
Michigan. Yeah,
play. Yeah,
as a Michigan team. You beat Ohio State there last year. Why not again?
yeah, but maybe the team is a little bit better.
So Michigan
Could be.
could beat you.
All right. Other important news, and it's actually surprising we got this far into the podcast without talking about it. Georgia loses Brock Bowers for an undetermined amount of time. He went out against Vandy with a high ankle sprain, left ankle sprain. He will undergo surgery to treat it, and prognosis for that surgery is 4 to 6 weeks. We've seen people come back sooner than you could expect sometimes. But will this affect Georgia's chances to get into the playoff race? Because I had to take a few weeks ago, Georgia without Brock Bowers is just average. I called them then. Maybe they are not average, but Georgia without Brock Bowers, he's one of the most important targets of Carson Beck. Luckily for Georgia, Dejan Edwards stepped up, the running back. He had 46 in the game. Dominic Lovett finally has a chance to step up as a number one receiver, like McConkey as well. But Georgia without Bowers.
Yeah, of course that's difficult to them because he was the main talking point all year. He is their yeah, best player actually. But I won't count Georgia out. It's a bit like Bama. They even if they lose their most important player, they will probably find a way to still grind themselves to wins if they need to. If they don't blow them out before, okay, they still have Florida. That should be a win actually. They have a ranked Missouri, ranked Ole Miss. At Tennessee could be a hard game, but when as we saw Tennessee this weekend, maybe that could be a blowout for them. And Georgia Tech. So even if they lose one, they still are getting into the championship game.
Hmm.
And if they win that one, they're in the playoffs. Not as a number one. It could be that they actually. I see them losing the number one spot without Bowers. That may be, but they won't go lower than three. That's really the maximum I would drop them.
Yeah. All right, but still to be determined, of course. A lot can happen in that case. Rankings time. We still have Air Force in, or we again have Air Force in the 6-0 team. The flying machines who run everything on the ground instead of through the air. I think Zach Larrier, his stats look pretty okay if it's only one game, but he's up to 468 yards on the season with 4 touchdowns. Great game if it were a game, but those are the season stats. But yeah, everything goes on the ground for Air Force, which is pretty ironic if you think of it. But they are in. Tulane is back in again. Iowa is in, and Missouri is in after they beat Kentucky. We've lost Washington State, Kansas, Kentucky, and Miami as well after they lost to UNC.
Yeah, Kansas had a pretty bad loss actually. Very close. They were leading the whole game, and then at the last few minutes, they lose to Oklahoma State. That must have been very disappointing.
Yeah. Other things that you noticed during the weekend.
Yeah, we can talk about Alabama again. They won against Arkansas, but just really closely, 24-21. They let Arkansas come back into the game, and yeah, they do win again, but Bama is not impressive, and they will probably get into the SEC championship game. So that's crazy to think about it. Even a beat down Bama, even a bad Bama team, will probably still win the SEC West. Or if Ole Miss can do something about that, we'll see. Of course, Louisville had a pretty bad loss against Pittsburgh. They were ranked 14th after
Mm.
their win against Notre Dame. And then they go and lose 38-21 in Pittsburgh. Or was that Louisville? I don't remember. But they lose pretty badly to Pittsburgh, which just puts an asterisk to their win
Mm.
against Notre Dame, and maybe even puts an asterisk next to Notre Dame, as you said, because
Mm.
yeah, that loss has just got even more bad because of this.
Yeah. Played at Pitt.
At Pitt, okay.
Yeah.
Kentucky was a disappointment against Missouri, and Duke was actually not the favorite in the game against NC State, and I don't get why because they won 24-3. And I remember telling you, okay, Duke is the underdog in this game. I'm going to take them.
Hmm.
They proved why, even without Riley Leonard. Tennessee won but disappointed. Florida actually had a good win against South Carolina, 41-39, and I think that's about it. Oh no, sorry, Stanford, Colorado. Of course, we have to talk a bit about that one.
There it is.
A double overtime game in which Colorado still loses to Stanford while they were up. Do you remember how much points they were up? I
28.
Let me check real quick.
I think it was 28.
So at one point in time, they were up 29-0, Colorado,
29.
at home. Let's note it's at home in Colorado. And then they just fucked it up, and Stanford came back into the game, tied the game, and they lost in overtime.
Yeah.
Maybe a note,
Apparently,
maybe a
I
note
d-
here. Travis Hunter was good on offense, but as a defensive back, he got 3 touchdowns against him.
and the last one was especially um
Yeah, that
how do
was
you say
brutal.
most. I think
Yeah,
that's how you call it in
let's put
layman's
it on a
terms.
poster. It will be a
Yeah,
gift probably.
yeah. Elekom Ayomanor. I'm sorry if I'm butchering the name, but yeah, he ended the game with 3 touchdowns. One of which was actually a highlight reel. All came in the second half. Um, Pretty sick loss for Colorado. Um, kind of had it coming because apparently, and I don't know if this is already confirmed, but uh, Shadur Sanders was promoting or advertising his merch or whatever during halftime on his socials. So, yeah, maybe kind of already thought the game was over and wasn't really awake for it. Coach Prime had a lot to say about it afterwards. Do you like the game or do you love the game? There's a great difference between the two. I think some people actually got a shouting,
That
yeah,
was actually a good
party.
speech. I don't
Yeah,
know
great speech.
if you
We
haven't
don't,
seen it, just go check it out.
yeah.
It got
Sometimes we have
some.
audio on this, but this time we don't have it. But it's out there. You can find it on YouTube. Um, all right, let's wrap it up. We are just about above the 1 hour mark already. Great stuff again. 8 weeks down if you include this week 0. 8 weeks to go. It's going to be a great second half of the season. Alexis, thank you very much for joining me tonight. Thank you very much, you guys, for listening again. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe on our newsletter, afcbelgium.com. Each week you will get a review or a preview of the upcoming games. We also have something in store coming up. We have a special podcast lined up, which is going to be recorded in a few weeks. So stay tuned for that. And everybody have a great car ride, gym session, or whatever you're doing right now. See you later. Bye bye.